It was raining harder than I'd ever seen in Seattle. My headlights caught a shape in the driveway. My daughter, pregnant, kneeling, her hands over her belly. Inside, laughter spilled from a house that wasn't hers anymore. I froze for a second. My keys slipped from my hand. Then something inside me, the mother I tried to bury years ago, woke up. I lifted her, walked straight through that storm, and said the one sentence that silenced every voice inside that house. If you've ever stood in the rain for someone you love, stay. This story will tell you why no silence is ever worth it. It was one of those nights Seattle forgets how to breathe. Rain hammering every rooftop, wipers fighting a losing battle, and the sky sitting low like it wanted to drown the whole city. I almost missed the driveway. My hands were cold on the steering wheel. My mind replaying Maya's last text. Mom, don't come tonight. Everything's fine. But when I pulled in, the headlights caught something that didn't belong. A figure, small, still, kneeling on the concrete. For a split second, I thought it was one of those lawn statues people put out for Christmas. Then it moved. It was my daughter. Her hair was plastered to her face, her coat clinging to her belly. She was 6 months pregnant. I froze. For a heartbeat, the world went silent except for the rain drumming on the roof of my car. Then, through that wall of water, I heard it, the sound of laughter. Warm, careless laughter coming from the house she shared with her husband. Something twisted inside me. I opened the door, and the wind slapped me across the face. The rain was freezing. It hit like needles. I ran to her, calling her name, my shoes sinking into the mud. Maya, baby, what are you doing out here? She didn't even look up at first. Her lips were blue, her hand shaking. Mom, go home. Go home. I dropped to my knees beside her, grabbed her shoulders. You're freezing. She tried to push me away, weakly. They said I needed to learn respect. It took me a moment to understand what she meant. When I did, I felt something inside me crack. I looked up at that house, warm light in every window, silhouettes moving behind the curtains. And all I could hear was more laughter. For a second, I couldn't move. My keys slipped from my hand and hit the ground with a dull clink. I just stared at them, my vision blurring, every muscle shaking. I'd promised myself years ago that I'd never live this scene again. I'd buried that version of me, the woman who used to fight. But here it was, playing out all over again, this time with my child. I picked up the keys, but I didn't go back to the car. I stood up. My heart was pounding so hard I could taste it. Maya, stand up. She hesitated, like she didn't believe she could. I pulled her into my arms. She felt weightless, fragile, her skin like ice. You don't have to kneel for anyone, I whispered. I wrapped my coat around her and half carried her toward the porch. My clothes were soaked, water dripping into my shoes. Every step felt heavier than the last. From the front window, I could see them. Adrian, his mother, his sister, passing plates, raising glasses, smiling like nothing was wrong. Like the woman outside, their daughter-in-law, wasn't shivering in the rain. When I reached the door, I hesitated again. My hand was trembling so badly that the keys rattled against the lock. My mind kept saying, "Don't make it worse, Naomi. Don't start something you can't finish." But then Maya coughed, a sound that didn't belong to someone alive and well. I turned the knob, found it locked, and something in me just snapped. I kicked the door once. The The sound echoed through the house like thunder. The laughter stopped. They turned. I saw confusion, then irritation, then that look I will never forget, contempt. Beatrice, his mother, was the first to speak. Naomi, this is not a good time. I took a deep breath. My voice came out low, steady, but it didn't feel like mine. No, Beatrice. The bad time started when you left her outside. No one moved. Water pooled at my feet, dripping off my hair, my coat, my daughter's sleeves. I could smell their dinner, roast chicken, wine. And suddenly, it made me sick. Adrian stood, jaw tight. You can't just... I just did. The room went dead quiet. For years, I'd been the calm one, the peacemaker, the one who swallowed her words to keep the peace. But that night, peace was the last thing I wanted. I looked him straight in the eye and said, if this is what you call family, then she's better off alone. Maya started to cry, softly at first, then harder, like the rain outside was coming from her. I held her tighter. You think love looks like obedience, I said to him, but all you've built here is fear. His mother muttered something about me being dramatic. I ignored her. Maya's coming with me, I said. Beatrice laughed, a short, sharp sound. And where will she go? Back to your tiny apartment? You think she'll thank you for this? I didn't answer. I walked past her, my arm still around my daughter, every eye in that room burning into us. The floor creaked beneath our steps. At the door, I turned back once. I don't even remember choosing the words. They just came out, calm and cold. Remember this night. The rain doesn't wash away everything. It leaves stains you can't see. Then we stepped outside. The air was sharp and clean. I helped Maya into the car, cranked the heat, and just sat there for a while, watching the raindrops chase each other down the windshield. My hands were shaking on the steering wheel. I didn't feel like a hero. I felt like a mother who just set the world on fire to save her child. When I glanced at her, she was staring out the window, eyes half closed, whispering something I couldn't hear over the storm. Maybe it was thank you. Maybe it was sorry. Maybe it was both. I wanted to tell her that everything would be okay, that love shouldn't hurt, that I'd figure out what to do next. But the truth sat heavy in my throat. I didn't know what came next. I only knew we couldn't go back. Outside, thunder rolled again. Somewhere behind us, that house kept its lights on, like nothing had happened. But I knew every person inside would remember this night, because for the first time in years, I hadn't been silent. And that silence, the one I broke, was louder than any storm. When Maya was little, she used to draw pictures of birds, bright ones, blue jays, cardinals, sparrows. I remember the day she brought me one she'd drawn in crayon. It was a small bird in a cage. She told me, "It's singing, Mom." I smiled, but inside, I wanted to cry. Because that bird was me. Back then, I was married to a man who had two voices, the one everyone loved, and the one only I heard behind closed doors. He never hit me at first. He just controlled everything. What I wore, who I saw, what I said. I learned how to make myself smaller, quieter, agreeable. I told myself I was keeping the peace for my daughter's sake. One night, when Maya was about 8, she came into the kitchen while I was cleaning up after another argument. My lip was bleeding. She didn't say anything, just stood there, holding her little blanket. Then she whispered, "Mom, you're shaking." I remember smiling at her, saying, "I'm fine, sweetheart. Mommy's just tired." That night, I made a promise to myself. I wouldn't let her grow up watching me break. It took me 2 more years to leave. 2 years of collecting cash in an old coffee tin, hiding it behind the rice bag. 2 years of pretending to forget the bruises so he wouldn't look too closely. When we finally left, it was raining, just like it was that night at Maya's house. I remember the sound of her laughter in the back seat, free, wild, like the bird she used to draw. I thought we were done with the cage. But the truth is, cages have a way of following you. They just change shape. As Maya grew older, I thought I was teaching her strength. I told her to study hard, to be independent, to never let anyone tell her who she was. I thought that was enough. But looking back, I realize I taught her how to survive, not how to fight back. I taught her silence disguised as patience, endurance disguised as strength. The first time I met Adrian, I saw the charm immediately. The kind of man who knows how to say all the right things, attentive, confident, successful. But there was something behind his smile. Something that reminded me of another man from another life. I tried to ignore it. Maya looked happy, and I didn't want to be the bitter mother who sees ghosts in every man her daughter loves. When they got married, I stood in that church watching my daughter glow in her white dress, and I thought, maybe this time it's different. Maybe she broke the cycle I couldn't. But now I see it. The cracks that had been there from the start. The small apologies, the careful words, the way she'd laugh off things that weren't funny. It's like looking at a photograph you've seen 100 times. But one day, the light hits it differently, and you finally notice what's been hiding in the shadows. Hospitals have a sound that never leaves you. It's not the monitors or the footsteps in the hallway. It's that tiny, merciless tick of the clock. 1 second, then another, and another, like it's counting how long you can hold your breath before breaking. I sat in that white room with my hands locked together, my coat still damp from the rain. Maya was in the next room. They wouldn't let me in. The nurse kept saying, "She's being taken care of, ma'am. Please wait here." I nodded, because that's what you do when you're powerless. You nod, but inside, I was screaming. Every second dragged like glass. My eyes were fixed on that clock on the wall, the red hand twitching forward again and again. It sounded like a heartbeat, only it wasn't hers. It was mine. A young doctor came in after what felt like hours. His shoes squeaked against the floor. I remember his face, pale and too young to be the bearer of bad news. He stood there, holding a clipboard he didn't know how to read from. "Mrs. Sterling, your daughter's stable now." I exhaled. I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath for that long. But then he said it. The part that breaks something permanent inside you. But the baby. We couldn't save him. For a moment, I didn't understand. The words didn't make sense, like he'd spoken in another language. I blinked at him, waiting for him to fix it, to take it back. He didn't. The room got smaller. The clock got louder. I wanted to cry. God, I wanted to. But no sound came out. I just stared at that white wall until the lines started to blur. My fingers were shaking, but my eyes stayed dry. Sometimes pain doesn't scream. It just stops everything. He handed me a folder, some kind of report with Maya's name typed across the top. I stared at it, my own name beneath hers, listed as emergency contact. The words blurred from the tears I still refused to let fall. He said something about paperwork, about unfortunate circumstances, about how hypothermia could come faster than anyone realizes. I didn't hear half of it. My brain only registered the phrase the baby didn't survive. When he left, I opened the folder. The words on that paper looked like any other document: clinical, clean, detached. But they were describing my grandchild, a heartbeat that had stopped before it got a chance to start. I folded the report once, twice, and slid it into my bag. I don't know why I did it. Maybe instinct. Maybe I already knew that one day someone would try to rewrite what happened. Maybe some part of me was already preparing for a fight I didn't yet understand. Through the window, I could see the rain still falling outside. It was softer now, like even the sky had run out of strength. I walked toward Maya's room. She was sleeping, her skin pale, lips cracked, a tangle of wires and tubes keeping her tethered to this world. I pulled a chair next to her bed. My hands hovered over hers but didn't touch. She looked peaceful, almost childlike. I remembered her as a little girl, curled up next to me during thunderstorms, whispering, "Don't worry, Mommy, it'll stop soon." Now it was my turn to whisper, but the words got stuck in my throat. I watched the monitor beside her, green lines rising and falling, beep, beep, beep. And underneath it all, that clock, ticking relentlessly. The sound took me back to another hospital, years ago, when I'd been the one in that bed. Different bruises, same silence. Back then, I promised her I'd never let this happen again. That no one would ever hurt her the way her father hurt me. And yet, here we were. I leaned back, pressing my palms against my knees, fighting the urge to scream, to shake her awake and ask her why. Why she stayed. Why she didn't tell me. Why I didn't see it. But the truth hit harder than the questions. She stayed because she was my daughter. She stayed because I'd taught her how. Not with words, but with example. I taught her endurance instead of resistance, patience instead of protection. Tears finally came, quiet and hot, sliding down my cheeks without a sound. The nurse came in, adjusting Maya's IV. She smiled at me softly, like someone who's seen this scene 100 times before. "You should get some rest, ma'am," she said. I just shook my head. "No, I'll stay." When she left, I reached for Maya's hand. Her fingers twitched, barely. I squeezed gently, whispering, "It's okay, baby. You can rest. I'm here." But even as I said it, I wasn't sure who I was trying to comfort, her or myself. Hours passed. The world outside turned from black to gray. Somewhere down the hall, a baby cried, sharp, new, alive. It was like a knife, that sound. I closed my eyes. For a second, I imagined what could have been. Tiny fingers, soft cries. Maya smiling again. Then the image vanished, replaced by the sterile white of the room and the clock's unending tick. When the nurse returned to check vitals, I stood and stretched. My legs were numb. She smiled again, said, "She's strong. She'll pull through." I nodded, but inside, I wasn't sure if she meant my daughter or me. Before I left the room for a moment, I reached into my bag, touched the folded paper inside, the medical report, still slightly damp from my hands. I didn't read it again. I just held it, because somehow I knew that piece of paper would matter. Not just for what it said, but for what it proved. And as I stood in that doorway, watching the rain fade into morning light, I realized something I'd never said out loud before. Grief doesn't always sound like crying. Sometimes it sounds like a clock. Tick, tick, tick. And you sit there, waiting for it to stop, knowing it never will. For 2 days, Maya barely spoke. The hospital sent her home, wrapped in silence and weak sunlight. I stayed close, making soup she didn't touch, washing sheets she didn't sleep in. She'd just sit by the window, staring at the street, like she was waiting for someone to drive up and say it was all just a mistake. On the third morning, I finally said it out loud. "I'm pressing charges, Maya. What they did, what he did, can't be buried." Her head snapped up, eyes wide like I just slapped her. "Mom, no. Please don't." "Don't!" My voice broke. "You lost your child, Maya." She flinched at the word child, as if hearing it burned. "It was an accident," she whispered. "He didn't mean for it to happen." He panicked. His mom, she was the one. I slammed the counter. "And he let her do it. He watched you on your knees in the rain." She shook her head, tears spilling fast. "You don't understand him. He's not like Dad. He's just lost. He said he'd change. He promised." And there it was, the sentence that made my stomach drop. He promised. The same words I once said about her father, years ago, to my own mother who had begged me to leave. I saw myself in her then, not just the shape of her face, but the way she defended the man who broke her. That twisted, desperate hope that if you love hard enough, you can heal cruelty. I tried to steady my voice. "Baby, I've been where you are. I believed the same things, and all it did was keep me in a cage I built myself." She turned away. "You left Dad, and you still hate yourself for it. Maybe I don't want to live with that kind of guilt." The words hit like cold water. She wasn't wrong. I did carry guilt. For breaking a home, for raising her without a father, for never knowing how much of my silence she absorbed as strength. But this wasn't strength. It was surrender, dressed up as love. "Maya," I said quietly, "love doesn't mean forgiveness without limits. It doesn't mean kneeling in the rain to prove your loyalty. It doesn't mean losing a child and still saying he didn't mean it." Her lip trembled. "If I tell the police, he'll go to jail. And then his whole family will hate me forever." Do you know what that feels like? To be the reason someone's life falls apart? I took a slow breath, trying to keep my voice steady. Yes, I know exactly what it feels like. Because I was that woman once, and I'm watching you become her. She started to sob, but I didn't move closer. I'd learned long ago that comfort at the wrong time can sound like permission. "I can't let this go, Maya," I said finally. "If you won't speak, I will." She looked at me then. A mix of fear, love, and betrayal. "Mom, please," she whispered. "Don't make this worse." That sentence cut deeper than anything. Don't make this worse. The same thing I'd said 20 years ago, when my own mother begged me to leave. The cycle had wrapped itself around us, tight as barbed wire. I sat down, too tired to argue. The rain outside had started again, tapping against the windows like an old memory. When she went upstairs to rest, I stayed there in the kitchen, staring at the steam rising from her untouched bowl of soup. My reflection in the window looked older than I remembered, a woman carrying 2 generations of silence. For a moment, I saw it all over again. The night I left her father. He'd thrown a plate. It shattered against the wall, missing me by inches. My mother was waiting in her car outside. I ran out barefoot, Maya in my arms, my heart beating so loud I could barely hear her crying. I told myself I was saving her, but maybe I was just passing something on. I pressed my palms to the counter, fighting the urge to break something. When Maya came back down later, her face was calmer, but her voice trembled. "I know you're trying to help," she said, "but I need time. I need to believe he can be better." I wanted to shake her, to make her see, but instead, I just looked at her, really looked. The bandage on her arm, the small tremor in her hands, the hope still clinging to her voice. "You don't owe him belief," I said softly. "You owe yourself peace." She didn't answer, just stared at the floor. That night, I lay awake in the guest room, listening to her footsteps pacing upstairs. Every creak in the floor sounded like a warning, every silence like a countdown. I thought about calling the police anyway. But then I remembered her face when she said, "You still hate yourself for leaving Dad." Maybe she was right. Maybe I did. And maybe she was terrified of carrying that same regret. So I did nothing. I waited. Around midnight, I heard her door open, soft steps down the stairs. I thought she was going to the kitchen. Instead, she stopped by my door. "Mom," she whispered. I opened my eyes but didn't move. "I know you're awake," she said, her voice small. "Thank you for not giving up on me. I'll figure it out." And then she was gone. Back up the stairs, I stared at the ceiling until morning, the same sentence repeating in my head. "I'll figure it out." That's what I used to tell myself too, right before things got worse. And that's when I realized the cruelest part about love, like hers. It doesn't feel like weakness. It feels like purpose, like faith, until it takes everything from you. I didn't plan to see him that day. It was a Thursday, quiet and gray, the kind of afternoon Seattle wears like a second skin. Maya was upstairs, sleeping for the first time in days. And I'd stepped out just to breathe. But when I closed the gate, I heard someone call my name. "Mrs. Sterling?" It was Mr. Alvarez from next door, the old man with the green lawn and the habit of waving at everyone. He was holding a thermos and wearing that same wool sweater I'd seen him in for years. "I'm sorry to bother you," he said, "but I think you should see something." He looked uneasy, glancing over his shoulder, like someone might be watching. He led me into his garage. The air smelled like oil and rain. A small workbench stood by the window, cluttered with wires, a half-finished birdhouse, and a laptop glowing faint blue in the dim light. "I've been testing this," he said, pointing to a small black device on the windowsill. "A motion camera. Picks up movement and sound. It's been facing your side yard for weeks." Didn't mean to pry. I just like tinkering. My heart kicked in my chest. He opened the laptop. The screen showed a frozen frame, the night it rained, the night everything broke. I could see her, Maya, kneeling in the driveway. The light from the porch made her skin look ghostly pale. The timestamp read 8:03 p.m. "Would you like me to delete it?" he asked softly. I couldn't speak. My hands were trembling. "Play it," I whispered. He clicked, and the video came alive. The rain fell in sheets, hitting the concrete like a drum. Maya's head was bowed, her hands on her belly. I heard faint laughter from inside the house, the sound that had burned into my memory. It was all there. Everything. The proof. I didn't realize I was crying until I saw my own reflection in the screen, the tears catching the light, turning my face into something raw and tired and almost unfamiliar. He pressed pause, then turned to me. I didn't want to overstep, but people like that, they get away with things because nobody wants to get involved. I nodded, trying to find my voice. "You did the right thing." He hesitated. "I can make you a copy. For the police. For whatever you need." "Please," I said. "Make two." While he worked, the room hummed with the sound of the printer and the rain against the metal roof. I stared at the frozen frame on the screen. The image was terrible and beautiful all at once. A mother's nightmare, a stranger's courage, a moment no storm could erase. When the files were ready, he handed me a small flash drive. His hands shook just a little. "It's not much," he said, "but sometimes a small light can burn through the dark." I closed my fingers around it. The metal felt warm, almost alive. "Thank you," I whispered. "You didn't just record it. You kept her truth alive." He smiled sadly. "Truth doesn't need to be loud, Mrs. Sterling. It just needs someone to hold on to it." That night, when Maya woke up, I sat beside her bed. She looked pale, eyes still heavy with grief. I told her about Mr. Alvarez, about the video. Her face went blank, then turned away. "Mom, please don't show anyone," she said, voice small. "I can't handle more people knowing. Maya, this is proof. This is justice. It's humiliation," she snapped. "For me, for him, for everyone." I wanted to argue, to shake her, but I stopped. I saw how fragile she looked, like one wrong word could shatter her completely. So I just said, quietly, "One day, you'll see this differently. You'll see it as the night you survived." She didn't respond. She turned her face toward the window. The rain had stopped, but the city still shimmered, wet and glistening under the streetlights. When she fell asleep again, I went downstairs and plugged the flash drive into my laptop. The footage started playing, and the glow from the screen filled the dark kitchen. Every second hurt to watch. Her breath visible in the cold, the way she shivered, the sound of the door slamming inside the house. But I couldn't look away, because now I knew this wasn't just a story between a man and a woman. It was evidence. It was power. The camera's lens had done what silence couldn't. It had remembered. At one point, lightning flashed outside, and for just a second, the screen went white. The reflection in it showed my face, wet eyes, steady jaw, and I realized something strange. For the first time in weeks, I didn't feel helpless. I felt anchored. The video ended. The room went still again. Only the quiet hum of the refrigerator and the faint ticking of the kitchen clock filled the space. I saved the file twice, once on the flash drive, once on my desktop, under a simple name, Rain, 8 p.m. Then I sat there for a long time, staring at the paused frame, the way the porch light hallowed her like she was both broken and holy. And I thought about what Mr. Alvarez said. Sometimes a small light can burn through the dark. Maybe that's what this was. Not revenge, not even justice yet. Just a light, flickering, fragile, but alive. I closed the laptop and looked out the window. The clouds were thinning just enough for a pale strip of moonlight to break through. It reflected off the wet pavement, and for a fleeting second, it looked like the whole street was made of silver. I pressed my hand to the glass and whispered to the night, "We're not done yet." And this time, I meant it. It started with a single post. Just a few words, no proof, no face. Maya Sterling faked her pregnancy for attention. Within hours, it spread like wildfire. Screenshots, hashtags, strangers weighing in on lives they knew nothing about. By the time I saw it, her name was everywhere. People were laughing, debating, tearing her apart in the comment sections of news sites and gossip pages. They called her manipulative, dramatic, unstable. They said I had raised a liar. I sat in the dark, scrolling, unable to look away. Every refresh brought new venom. Someone had found an old picture of her at a baby shower, smiling, one hand on her belly. They zoomed in and wrote, "No bump." She was lying even then. I wanted to scream. To grab the world by the shoulders and shout, "You weren't there that night. You didn't see her in the rain." But the internet doesn't care about the truth. It cares about the performance. And in that cruel theater, silence looks like guilt. By the next morning, Maya's phone was buzzing nonstop. Hundreds of messages. Some pitying, most cruel. Old friends stopped replying. Her coworkers unfollowed her. Even her church group released a statement saying they were praying for discernment. She sat at the kitchen table, face pale, eyes hollow. "Mom," she whispered, "they think I lied about the baby." I tried to steady my voice. "Let them talk. The truth will come out." Her hands shook. "It won't matter. Once people decide you're a liar, it doesn't matter what's real anymore." That sentence broke something inside me. A few hours later, a reporter showed up at our doorstep. Camera crew, microphones. "Mrs. Sterling, do you have any comment on the allegations that your daughter fabricated her pregnancy to gain sympathy?" I shut the door before I even realized what I was doing. My hands were shaking so hard, I could barely turn the lock. I called a lawyer that afternoon. Dana Morris, a woman I knew from a shelter board I once volunteered for. When I told her what was happening, she didn't sound surprised. "That's how abusers win in the digital age," she said. "They weaponize shame before the truth can speak." Dana came over that evening. She brought her laptop, notebooks, and a look of quiet focus that made me feel, for the first time, like we had a plan. I showed her the footage from Mr. Alvarez's camera, the rain, the porch, the laughter inside. She watched it twice without saying a word. When it ended, she leaned back. "This video changes everything," she said. "But if we release it now, they'll twist it. They'll say it's fake or staged or edited." "So what do we do?" I asked. "We build a case," she said, "piece by piece. You have truth on your side, but truth needs strategy." That night, I went online again. The lies had spread further. Adrian's family was posting too. Long, self-righteous messages about how Maya struggled with mental instability and fabricated trauma. Thousands of people shared them. It was like watching a fire consume every memory of who she really was. Then, in the middle of the chaos, one comment stopped me cold. Beneath a thread full of hate, someone had written, "From Malaysia, we stand with you. Don't let them silence your truth. Just one voice, one stranger halfway across the world." But it felt like oxygen. I read it over and over, whispering the words like a prayer. When I showed it to Maya, she smiled for the first time in weeks. "Someone believes me," she said quietly. "Someone I've never even met." I realized then how starved she'd been for belief, for someone to say, "I see you. I believe you." The next day, Dana helped us file a restraining order and an initial report. She told us to stay offline, to let her handle the rest. But I couldn't resist checking the comments. I needed to see if anyone else was defending her. A few were. Small voices among the noise. Women writing, "This happened to me too," or "Don't give up, Maya." Each message was like a spark in the dark. But the hate still burned louder. Videos mocking her voice, edited photos, even a fake GoFundMe in her name that someone made just to call her a scam. I stayed up all night, deleting what I could, blocking strangers, sending cease and desist emails. But it felt endless. For every lie I erased, 2 more appeared. By morning, I found Maya sitting by the window again, holding her phone. She looked exhausted, but her eyes had a strange calm. "I think I get it now," she said softly. "When you said the truth takes time, I sat beside her. It does. But it also takes courage and patience. She turned the phone toward me. She'd posted something on her own page. A short message. Just 10 words. I don't need to defend myself. The rain remembers. Within hours, it spread. Not as fast as the hate, but steady. People began asking questions. What rain? What does she mean? Was there proof? And then, just like that, the tide began to shift. Not completely, not enough. But a few people started to wonder if maybe, just maybe, they'd been wrong. By evening, hashtags flipped. Justice for Maya. Let her speak, Dana called that night. It's working, she said. The story's changing. I looked at Maya, sitting there, tired but upright, her fingers tracing the edge of the flash drive on the table. For the first time in a long while, her shoulders weren't hunched. Maybe the truth hadn't won yet, but it had stopped losing. And in a world where lies ran faster than light, that felt like victory. I met her by accident, or maybe fate was just tired of watching us lose. It was late afternoon, sky heavy with the kind of gray that feels permanent. I'd just left Dana's office when someone called my name. Mrs. Sterling? I turned and saw a young woman standing by the cafe across the street. Petite, nervous. Her hair was damp from the drizzle. I didn't recognize her, but there was something familiar in her eyes. That same quiet ache I used to see in Maya. I'm Rowan, she said, Adrian's sister. For a second, I froze. Every instinct told me to walk away. My pulse started to race, but she looked scared. Not of me, of herself. What do you want? I asked, trying to keep my voice even. She took a shaky breath. To tell you, I'm sorry. And to give you something. She opened her purse and pulled out a small USB drive, the metal catching what little light there was. She held it like it might burn her. What is that? It's the original video, she said. The one from that night. My brother's friend edited parts before posting it to make Maya look unstable. But this, her voice cracked, this shows everything. From the beginning. My throat tightened. Why are you giving this to me now? Her eyes darted toward the ground. Because I can't keep pretending anymore. I watched him destroy her online. I watched our parents defend him like he was some kind of saint. But I was there that night. I saw the whole thing through the window. I just didn't stop it. The rain started again, soft at first, then steady. She didn't move. You saw her? I whispered. She nodded. She was begging him to let her in. He just stood there. And when your headlights showed up, he told us to stay quiet, said it was a family matter. I wanted to call someone, but She looked away, voice trembling. He told me if I ever opened my mouth, I'd lose my job, my apartment, everything. I felt a strange mix of anger and pity swelling inside me. And you believed him? I was scared, she said simply. But when I saw her face on the news, when I read what people were saying about her, I couldn't breathe. I kept hearing her voice in my head. That night, when she was crying outside, she kept saying, "Please, I'm cold." Her voice broke completely then. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to hate her, to scream that she was too late. But looking at her, the way her hands shook, the guilt carved into every word, I couldn't. Instead, I asked quietly, "Why now, Rowan? Why today?" She took a breath. Because I heard what they're planning. Adrian's father wants to sue Maya for defamation. They think you don't have anything solid. But if you use this, she held up the USB again. It'll clear everything, and it'll ruin them. I hesitated before taking it. You understand what this means, right? They'll turn on you. Her lips trembled into something like a smile. They already have. I stopped being their daughter the moment I said he was wrong. We stood there in silence, rain tapping the umbrella like a ticking clock. Then she whispered, almost to herself, maybe freeing her is the only way I can free myself. Something in her tone hit me deep, that quiet, resigned kind of courage that only women who've lived under fear can summon. Rowan, I said softly, you did the right thing. She laughed bitterly. It doesn't feel like it. It feels like I'm betraying everyone. Sometimes betrayal is the only honest thing left, I said. She looked up, eyes red, and nodded. Promise me you'll use it. I promise. She placed the USB in my hand, her fingers cold and trembling. Then maybe something good can still come from all this. And just like that, she walked away. No goodbye, no turning back, just disappeared into the misty street, her figure swallowed by the rain. When I got home, I plugged the drive into my laptop. My hands were shaking so badly I almost dropped it. The screen flickered, and there it was. Uncut footage. Maya, kneeling, Adrian shouting, his mother's voice, cruel and sharp. Everything. Unfiltered. Undeniable. Halfway through, I stopped breathing. The camera had caught something I hadn't seen before. A moment where Maya looked up toward the window, toward Rowan. Their eyes met for a fraction of a second. Maya's lips moved, forming one word, please, and Rowan had turned away. I covered my mouth, tears flooding hot and sudden. The guilt she carried, it wasn't imagined. It was carved into her bones. When the video ended, I sat in the dark, listening to the rain outside. For the first time, I felt something shift, not just hope, something deeper. It wasn't just Maya's fight anymore. It wasn't even mine. It was every woman who'd been told to keep quiet, every sister who stayed silent, every daughter who learned too late that love shouldn't hurt like this. I sent the file to Dana with one sentence attached. We have truth. Minutes later, my phone buzzed with her reply. Then let's make it count. I looked at the USB still in my palm, tiny and cold, yet somehow heavier than anything I'd ever held. Rowan's words echoed in my head. Freeing her is also freeing me. And I realized that sometimes the bravest act isn't standing against an enemy. It's standing against your own blood. The courtroom was cold, that kind of quiet, heavy cold that makes every sound feel sharper. I could hear the rain outside steady and relentless against the tall windows, like it refused to be ignored. The benches were full. Reporters, strangers, people who only knew us from headlines. I sat beside Dana, my lawyer, my anchor. Across the aisle, Adrian's family, stiff, polished, rehearsed, looked everywhere but at us. When the judge entered, everyone stood. I tried to breathe. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, so I folded them tight in my lap. Dana leaned toward me. Remember, she whispered, today we let the truth speak. You don't have to do anything else. Then the first video began to play, the real one, the one Rowan had given me. The sound filled the room. The rain, the pleading, the laughter from inside the house. You could hear Maya's voice crack when she said, please, just let me in. No one moved, no one coughed. Even the reporters stopped typing. When the clip ended, the judge looked down for a long time before speaking. We'll take a short recess, he said quietly. 5 minutes. As people shuffled and murmured, Adrian's lawyer jumped up, voice trembling with anger. Your Honor, this footage is illegally obtained and incomplete. It doesn't show the full context. Dana stood, calm but unyielding. Context? She said. The context is a pregnant woman begging for safety while her husband laughs. That's not a narrative. That's evidence. A few heads turned toward me, but I kept my eyes forward. I wasn't here to win applause. I just wanted the truth to breathe. When recess ended, the judge called the court back to order. Adrian was told to take the stand. He walked slowly, still wearing that look of superiority he'd worn since the first day of the trial. But when Dana began questioning him, his confidence started to crack. "Mr. Hale," she said evenly, on the night of March 12th, "where were you between 7:50 and 8:15 p.m.? "At home," he said. "With your wife?" "Yes." "Inside the house?" He hesitated. "Yes." "So when your wife was found outside at 8:03, soaked to the bone, how long had she been there?" He blinked, then stammered, I don't know." Dana didn't flinch. "You don't know because you didn't look, Mr. Hale. You didn't open the door. You didn't even call for help." She paused, letting the silence stretch. "But someone else did. Mr. Alvarez's camera did. It saw everything your conscience refused to." The room stayed dead quiet. Even Adrian's lawyer avoided eye contact. When Maya took the stand, I felt my breath catch. She looked so small, her hands clasped together, voice soft but steady. "I thought love meant forgiving," she said. "But love doesn't mean forgetting. It doesn't mean pretending pain didn't happen." The judge leaned forward, listening. The air felt thick with something I couldn't name. Maybe pity, maybe respect. Finally, Dana played the last few seconds of the video again. The moment when I appeared, when I rushed to Maya and pulled her up from the mud. The judge looked up. "Mrs. Sterling," he said, "what were you thinking in that moment?" I swallowed hard. That if I didn't open that door, no one would. That sometimes being a mother means breaking something open, even if it's the law, even if it's yourself. He nodded slowly. Then, after what felt like forever, he turned to the courtroom. The evidence is clear. Naomi Sterling's actions, though forceful, were taken in immediate defense of another person's life. This court finds her not guilty of trespassing or assault. A soft gasp rippled through the room. Dana exhaled, shoulders dropping for the first time in weeks. I sat frozen, the words taking a moment to sink in. Then came the sentence I'll never forget. The judge looked right at me and said, "A mother's instinct is not a crime." Something broke open inside me then. Not from pain, but release. Outside, the rain still fell, but it sounded different now. Lighter, softer. As if the sky had been holding its breath too, and finally let it go. Reporters swarmed near the steps, shouting questions. I didn't answer any of them. I just stood there under the courthouse archway, watching the water slide down the stairs, washing away the mud, the dust, the lies. Maya came out a few minutes later. She walked slowly, still fragile. But when our eyes met, she smiled. A real smile. Small, but alive. Rowan stood across the street, half hidden beneath an umbrella. Our eyes met briefly, and she nodded. No words. None were needed. Dana joined me on the steps. "You did it," she said. I shook my head. "No," I whispered. "We did." Behind us, the courthouse bell struck noon, each chime echoing through the wet streets like punctuation marks in a story that finally found its truth. And as the last sound faded into the rain, I thought of all the women still waiting for their own verdicts, in silence, in fear, in hope. Justice, I realized, isn't a place. It's a pulse, something you have to keep alive again and again, until the world learns how to listen. It took months before Maya started sewing again. At first, she'd only mend little things, a torn sleeve, a frayed hem, but every stitch looked like a prayer she didn't know how to say out loud. She said the rhythm calmed her, that it helped her remember she still had control over something. One morning, she called me into the living room. "Mom," she said, holding up a folded piece of fabric, "I think I'm ready." I didn't understand at first. Then she spread it out on the table. A soft, cream-colored dress, the kind expectant mothers wear when their bodies begin to change. "For them," she said quietly, "for women who still believe they're alone." That's how Gentle Nest began. Just a small sewing studio above a bakery on Lake Union. The sign out front was hand-painted, simple, but full of meaning. Gentle Nest, made with hands that know healing. The first customer came by accident, a young woman who lost her baby in the second trimester. She just wanted to talk, she said. Maya made her tea and listened for hours. The woman didn't leave with a dress that day, but she left with something lighter in her chest. After that, word spread. Not through ads or posts, but through whispers. From one grieving woman to another. By the end of the first month, the studio was full. There were fabrics draped over every chair, little jars of buttons by the window, and laughter. Real laughter, echoing again through the space. Sometimes I'd catch Maya humming while she worked, her hair tied back, sunlight spilling across her shoulders. There were moments I'd just stand at the doorway and watch, afraid that if I spoke, I'd break the fragile peace we'd fought so hard to reach. One afternoon, Rowan came by, carrying a stack of notebooks. "I'm writing again," she said, smiling shyly. "A series about women who fight back, but quietly, in their own way." Maya looked up, surprised. "You're serious?" Rowan nodded. "I called it Every Mother. Bleeds the same tears. For a long time, none of us said anything. The title alone carried so much weight, so much truth. When Rowan asked to interview us, Maya hesitated. "I don't want pity," she said. Rowan shook her head. "Then don't tell it for pity. Tell it for power." That night, we stayed at the studio long after closing. The three of us sat by the window overlooking the lake. Outside, the rain had stopped, but droplets still clung to the glass, catching bits of light from passing cars. It looked like the whole city was breathing again. Maya sipped her tea, then said, almost to herself, "I used to hate the rain. Every drop felt like a memory I didn't want." "And now?" I asked. She smiled faintly. "Now it feels like it's washing something clean." Rowan reached for her recorder. "Can I quote that?" We laughed. It was a small sound, but it filled the room like sunlight. When the article was published a few weeks later, it spread farther than any of us expected. Messages poured in, from mothers, daughters, even sons. People from Brazil, Malaysia, Kenya, Germany. Some wrote, "I see my mom in her." Others said, "Thank you for showing that healing doesn't have to be loud." It wasn't fame we felt. It was connection. A reminder that pain, when shared honestly, can turn into something beautiful. On the morning the rainbow appeared over Lake Union, Maya was cutting fabric near the window. She stopped mid-motion, eyes wide. "Mom, look." I followed her gaze. The arc stretched perfectly across the gray sky, soft, steady, and impossibly clear. We stepped outside, just standing there in the quiet drizzle. The air smelled clean, like new beginnings. Maya slipped her hand into mine. "Do you think healing ever really ends?" she asked. I squeezed her fingers gently. "No," I said. "I think it just changes shape. She smiled, the kind that reaches the eyes this time, and looked up at the rainbow again. Then I guess we're finally learning to live in the light. Behind us, inside the studio, the sewing machine hummed softly, like a heartbeat finding its rhythm again. For the first time in a long while, I didn't hear the rain as something sad. It sounded full, alive, like an echo of everything we survived. The first time I stepped into that empty gym, I almost turned back. It smelled of dust and old rubber mats, the kind of place that still carried echoes of other people's battles. But when I looked around, I realized this was exactly what I needed. A place where silence could become strength again. That's how the first self-defense class started. No budget, no sign-up sheets, just 6 women who showed up because they'd heard someone say, "There's a mother teaching people how to fight back." At first, they were timid, shoulders hunched, eyes avoiding each other. Some had bruises still fading, others carried scars you couldn't see. I started simple. How to hold their ground, how to breathe when fear takes over. And by the end of that first hour, they weren't just standing taller. They were looking at one another like they'd finally met someone who understood. A week later, Maya brought her camera. "You need to show this," she said. I laughed. Who's going to watch an old woman teaching sidekicks? But she was right. The world needed to see that healing didn't mean forgetting. It meant reclaiming your voice, one small move at a time. So she filmed me. No script, no fancy lighting, just me saying what I wish someone had told me years ago. Silence doesn't protect you. It only protects the one who hurts you. When we posted the video, I thought maybe a few friends would share it. By the next morning, there were hundreds of comments, then thousands, from women in India, Canada, Nigeria, Argentina, all saying the same thing. I needed this. I thought I was alone. One woman from Poland wrote, "My mother never fought back, but maybe I still can." Another from Japan said, "We don't talk about this here. Thank you for breaking the silence for us." I cried reading those, not out of sadness, but because, for the first time, I felt the world breathing together. A few days later, Maya came running into the gym, her phone in hand. "Mom," she said, "look." The video had passed 1 million views, but that wasn't what made me smile. It was the comments, people tagging their mothers, their sisters, their friends, writing, "Watch this. She reminds me of you." That's when I realized this story stopped being ours a long time ago. It belonged to anyone who'd ever whispered, "I'm fine," when they weren't. Anyone who ever mistook silence for safety. Now, every Saturday morning, the class grows bigger. Women come with daughters, some even with their mothers. We start with stretches, but it always ends the same. Laughter, hugs, and sometimes tears that no longer sting. There's a sign on the wall now, painted by Maya. It says, "No rain lasts forever." Sometimes, when I see the sunlight hit those words, I think about everything we lost and everything we found because of it. I think about Rowan writing her articles, about Maya behind that camera, capturing every quiet victory, and about all those women across the world standing a little taller because one small story reminded them they're not alone. If you're listening to this, maybe you know someone who's still quiet. Maybe it's your friend, your neighbor, or maybe it's you. If it is, I want you to remember this. The moment you speak, even in a whisper, the world will start to listen. Because every story, no matter how broken, carries the power to save someone else. So share this, not for us, but for her, the one who still thinks she has to stay silent. Tell her that her voice matters. Tell her that somewhere, a mother in Seattle once stood in the rain and decided enough was enough. And if you're watching this from another country, leave a comment. Tell us where you are. Let the map fill with voices, because pain may speak in many languages. But healing sounds the same everywhere. No storm lasts forever. The rain ends, the clouds clear, and what's left is light.